You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast, and this week we're taking it away with kind of a B&R episode. How that impacts finance and faith, and Wizards of the Coast's ability to do things, how that impacts finance, and how B&Rs have changed over the years, and what's kind of been some odd flash-in-the-pan incidents related to that. So with that, let's take it away.
Yep, so we're initially kind of taking a run at this from the last, it's not a quarter because these B&Rs have been spanning the last couple, but the last 4 months because we're going to go back to May. We're going to start with the May announcement and what happens there shortly after the PT. And that is basically that nothing happens in this announcement. And Pioneer players have been clamoring for something to change in their format. And
Unban 3 Fairy, please.
Or ban something and change the format and kind of rotate things from there. And we start to hit this bit of a sticky wicket with these ban announcements because we have a Pioneer Pro Tour and Rakdos Vampires is the breakout deck there. And the cycling of the B&Rs is as such now that in this timeline that we're talking about, we're about 3 weeks removed from a set release when we get the next B&R. 2 weeks, I believe, from release. 3 weeks from pre-release, 2 weeks from release. And at no point in time has WotC ever really wanted to ban anything from a new set. They'll ban around it as best they can when they need to. Otherwise, they will stay away from brand new cards. So we have Outlaws of Thunder Junction releasing before the Pro Tour. And we have the Pro Tour and then a B&R in May. So we're a little too close to that for anything. So Pioneer players clamoring for change from a stagnant format get nothing. And all that we get in this ban restricted announcement is a dedicated ban of all that glitters in Pauper. Sure, cool. You can't have... Yeah, you can't have cranial platings in that format, and that's fine. So we pre-ban cranial RAM and call it a day on Modern Horizon 3 as well.
Yep.
Then the bulk of this announcement really centers around Legacy and Vintage because Standard is a nothing burger format at this point in time. And basically there's 2 points in this that they're bringing up. And that is that in the Legacy and Vintage side of things, the uncards are banned. The sticker and what are they called? The traction cards are banned.
Yep.
And we begin to finally see this rub of the way WotC views the format versus the way the players engage with the format start to appear. And we realize that this banning is lip service, and that's what we're going to get for our format for effectively the future. Before this ban happened, WotC released these cards and said they'd have a solution to the logistical problems that they themselves created with stickers and attractions, but they refused to solve them. And over time, these logistical problems moved from just being problems with the cards and how to mark them themselves and became tournament logistics problems.
Yep.
And the judges had to spackle gaps. Players had to figure out exactly what it meant in a stickered environment. Did they need to have their own stickers? If they were playing clone effects, did they need to have their own stickers because they could pump fake? Yeah. And at the end of the day, WotC did not solve their own problem through any means or methods besides banning these cards. So they swept both of these mechanics that they created and poorly supported under the rug where they've been left to rot. That's the big part of this announcement. The little part that we got is they called out that Bowmasters and Grief are, quote, big players, unquote, in the Legacy metagame, and they would be watching these cards. At this point in time, Rescaminator had been grabbing metagame share for 5 months already, and the grief problem was well known and could have been solved then. Bowmasters was still shaping the format. People were trying to figure out how to play it best, and right now we are in a version of Legacy where Bowmasters is honestly on the downtrend because Psychic Frog is just a much better threat overall.
So good.
It is insane. And it's effectively pushed Bowmasters out of the format, which also means that Gristlebrand is the monster de choix for not just Rescaminator, but people playing World Gorger Dragon combo and Show and Tell. We're now back on G-Daddy.
Yep.
Next to Atraxa in that list, because the Bowmaster problem has technically been solved by the release of a card that might actually be banned in the August announcement, Psychic Frog, but we don't know. So we start to see this kind of performative lip service take place in May. A very clean banning in Pauper. Nobody cares about Standard just yet. Modern is on the horizon. They just banned Violent Outburst. There's a little bit of conversation about that. They do, again, pay a little bit of lip service to Leyline of the Guild Pack because that took over RC Denver and for a little while kind of ran things with Scion of Draco. And they said they would be monitoring it. And they... quote, naturally, we expect that Modern Horizons 3 will impact the format, and I'm personally very excited to see the brewing and experimentation that comes out of that set, unquote. That's May. May was all right. June is an absolute shit show. And people are now using the June announcement to say WotC has the opportunity to do, quote, the funniest thing ever, and just announce again, no changes in all formats.
I both hope they do and hope they don't.
Yes.
They can't.
No.
But they probably will.
So right now, looking at the May announcement, we have a continued erosion of trust in WotC to manage the Pioneer format. The top decks, save for Amalia, had been the same for years. Mono green, like, ebbs and flows. Everything else is a known quantity. It just keeps getting better cards over time. Yep. Those players are markedly frustrated when this comes out, and they just kind of do whatever it is they're going to do after that within the format. Nobody's playing Standard. Nobody really cares. Modern, cool. We have Modern Horizons 3 upcoming. You get your season, then we'll see you in a month. And then this lip service for Legacy, although they're tied at the hip when it comes to the announcement of the banning of stickers, attractions, and conversation about Bowmasters and grief.
Yeah.
So, timing on this, people are beginning to notice it's a little poor coming several weeks after a set release. We have problems here because WotC is always reticent to ban cards from a brand new set.
And when you're releasing sets every month, there's always a new set with new cards to ban.
Exactly. So it's very difficult to figure this out, especially with a supplemental set in Modern Horizons 3 coming in a month. And WotC clearly says in this announcement, at least for Modern, that they expect Modern Horizons 3 to actually change the format enough that they will reevaluate the format there. There's really no note about Modern Horizons 3 for much else. The last sentence in the Legacy section, quote, historically, Modern Horizons sets have had the ability to influence Legacy, so we'll see how the format evolves as it absorbs Modern Horizons 3. Spoiler alert, nothing changed. It just got worse. Everybody that was playing Dimir X just plays Psychic Frog and Nethergoyf now. Cool story. Great format. Yeah. Any notes about the May list and what you might have seen from the LGS perspective in regards to trust from players of WotC?
Yeah. No, one of the big things, and this was not just players, but this was stores as well, other stores in the area. It was, hey, like, I can't order a bunch of this product because I can't reliably sell it long-term like I used to, not just because there's new releases, but because this stuff's, if a new set's every month, it's going to get banned. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden people are like, hey, there's a Pioneer event coming up, but they knew a B&R was scheduled and literally expected something to happen to that format as they have been begging for. And it was, you know what? I don't want to, build a deck. Mm-hmm. because I know there's a BNR in like a month and it could just get banned because nobody has any idea what they're going to do with the format. And that feels bad both as a player and as a store, obviously, because now I can't in good faith, someone comes in, hey, I want to build a Pioneer deck. Cool. So do you want to be casual, competitive? Competitive, great. Let's take a look at what's good. Oh, by the way, you're about to drop $500 on this deck, and in a month it could be banned.
Yep.
That just feels bad for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then not only that, well, now my buy list is a little bit more conservative on that stuff because I expect something to happen. And then it doesn't. Well, now I'm just out of cards because I didn't buy any because my numbers were lower.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another BNR in 2 months. Well, do I really want to, buy up with the risk of all that happening again? Can I afford to or not? And it's just another way that Wizards has eroded what used to be a very intertwined, beneficial relationship between Wizards of the Coast and the LGS and the players, obviously. And it just feels bad when you have the optics behind these announcements. Back in the day, as I'm sure you remember, it was one BNR a year basically, and then it was quarterly. And it was, hey, it's January. Here's our BNRs for the year. These are the dates.
Yep.
And you knew, okay, cool, this is great. I have up until a couple weeks before then to really do whatever I want. And then the BNR can impact things as, standard or extended back then, or 1.5 or 1.x, whatever happens with those. And it made it a lot easier as an LGS to plan for that, to plan my events around that because, hey, Modern for the next 3 months isn't going to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a good spot and people like it. Let me schedule Modern events. Or, oh, they've ignored Legacy for 2 BNR announcements and Mystical Tutor is still running rampant. I'll stay away from it because the meta's bad. Kind of like with Grief now. And not having that ability to be able to plan long term, and this is something we've harped on the podcast before, it really does get you in the, I really can only own these cards long enough to turn them into whatever margin I want to make on it. And that's my nut. And it hasn't been great because it's made stocking singles harder.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if I'm going to get stuck on this Shale Dread or it's going to get banned and all of a sudden it's worth $15. And it's just difficult. It's tough when that trust isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And, it used to be, obviously people now are calling for emergency bans everywhere. I remember the only emergency ban ever in the history of Magic, and it was Memory Jar. Memory Jar was so egregious, and people may not remember this. They literally, they said that Grand Prix where Memory Jar was, or that Pro Tour, that doesn't count anymore. It never happened. The person who won that Pro Tour didn't win the Pro Tour. And that was huge at the time.
Yeah.
Players were floored because this is unprecedented. Not only are you announcing this out of, are you erasing this Pro Tour, you're completely announcing it out of what the tender you set out was. Flash was another one that was kind of unique. And that was before recently. These were the 2 things I remember happening that kind of eroded faith in their handling of the BNR. And it was when Flash got banned in Legacy. And GP Flash is infamous for being insanely degenerate, but it's also very unique because prior to that Grand Prix, Flash was banned, but the effective date of the ban was the Sunday of the event. And since you had to run the same 75 for the whole event, you could run Flash on Sunday if it's what you ran the other days. And I remember overnight when they changed the errata that made Flash good, it went from a quarter bulk rare to $50. And I remember people digging through bulk bins faster than I have ever seen them in my life, trying to find that card. And I remember watching Star City on Monday before the event, $40. Tuesday before the event, $35. Wednesday before the event, $30. Then 20 and below because they knew you weren't going to get it in time for the event. Mm-hmm. But that was something that we as vendors had enough time to plan for once the announcement was made.
Yeah.
That was in a 25-year period. Only those 2 things happened in 25 years. Now in the past 4 months, we have 2 more. And it's far from the only example in recent memory. It's just, it doesn't feel good.
Nope.
And I know, there was, I think it was the May one. Yeah, when all the glitters got banned, they had the Pauper Council write up why they thought it should be banned.
Yes.
That is actually the one thing they've done recently that gives me faith in how they're handling this. Because they've given thoughtful, well-explained, well-reasoned explanations of why these cards are banned or unbanned. Mm-hmm. Specifically with Pauper, because there's a dedicated committee panel for it. But other than that, it's just been awful.
Yep.
It doesn't matter with Pauper, frankly, in terms of finance, because those cards are not worth a ton. But, when you get into soon standard, which matters again, or you're in modern now, it just feels really bad to not have the stability of knowing I'm going to buy these cards and they're going to be playable for the foreseeable future for me. And you just don't have that faith anymore, and it sucks.
Yep. So we have so that basically all goes on between the May and the June announcement. We have a little bit of that rub with Pioneer. Well, not a little bit. The continued rub with Pioneer.
Yeah.
Legacy players are tired of what's going on in the format, and things only get worse for them. And so there's a stark difference between what happens in the May announcement with the Pauper banning specifically. I honestly forgot that the Pauper committee wrote up a thing.
Yeah.
And the June announcement. After the June announcement, WotC does make an attempt at transparency, but they show they whole ass. They show they whole ass with this one. And I'm just going to go down this BNR real quick. I'm just going to run through my notes. First things first, you do actually talk about standard here because unbeknownst to us at the time, there was going to be a large standard announcement, which we got today or yesterday. And we will talk about that in a couple of weeks. Standard GPs and how they are actually going to affect the game. It's kind of serendipitous timing based on scheduling. But they say they are very specifically looking at the domain deck, and they are looking at Atraxa, Grand Unifier, and Knight Errant of Eros, and what's going to happen with standard post-rotation. Cool, we do have that rotation coming up. There is no need to do anything with the format that is effectively being disengaged with for the time. We don't really know what the format actually looks like. Nobody really cares about it. So let's see what happens after rotation. Great, and the way things look like right now in terms of meta share, domain is on top, but not by that much. There's a lot going on below it in terms of tiering, and that's fine. Great, dandy. We'll see what happens. Another couple of years of Atraxa might not be that bad if the deck isn't the most popular and the best thing to be doing at the same time.
Yeah.
Cool story. When it comes to Pioneer, WotC said they'd be, quote, keeping an eye on Amalia combo, unquote, via the RCQ events, but the format had already become stale. It had become stale before May, basically right. I want to say before the Pioneer PT, like I did earlier, because we knew about Rakdos Vampires. We just didn't know how good it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so there's that, like, do you want to call it before or after? 6 to 1, half a dozen to another, right? We have seen meaningful changes to the format here and there. For instance, the introduction of Amalia combo with Lost Caverns introduced another top deck to the format. That said, rarely has a standard set done much to change the context of the format. Instead, they tend to bolster top strategies, further coalescing the format around extant strategies. There's still Phoenix. There's still 5-color control. Rakdos Vampires is basically just Rakdos mid, which is in every format for the most part. It just plays a slightly different game. It still runs Fable and a bunch of other extremely overpowering threats. Smuggler's Copter as well. What else is there in that format? Lotus Field, which again, like Mono Green Devotion, has its ups and downs. Sometimes it does well, sometimes it doesn't. And then I already mentioned Phoenix, but I feel like
Nib to Light, still now and then.
Yeah, that's the one I was. That's one I was missing. Nib to Light, with and without Yorion, depends what you want to do with that deck. That is, again, I feel like Bring to Light was a 0-day deck in the format. It ebbed and flowed, and then when we got the Niv Mizzet of the Guild Pact or whatever it was from War of the Spark block, where you look at the top 10 cards of your library.
That's when it took off as Nib to Light.
Yeah, that juiced the deck. Yep. So basically, WotC is just saying, like, hey, we're seeing results come in, cool, fine, dandy. This looks like a format that people sure are playing, but seemingly do not engage with. WotC is not on a meaningful level. They call out Amalia combo as being an interesting and good deck to them because it's a creature combo deck. But what they care about is Amalia's ability to draw a game, and that creating a negative play experience.
Yep.
Not the format writ large being the same for the last couple of years, save for the introduction of that deck. So what is it? This is just a performative, like 3 sentences. Same as what we saw with Legacy. Cool. Then we get to Modern and Legacy, and they suffer the same issues in that Modern Horizons 3 had been released weeks earlier, had the ability to reshape the format, and did make a very meaningful change. Then, when you look at that set, 10 days after a release, when you have this announcement, you make a ban, you now impact sales for that set. So what do we think is going to happen? Nothing. Nothing from Modern Horizons 3 is going to get banned.
We've literally already seen that with Hogak. There were multiple events where they were like, hey, Hogak should be banned, and it took until after a Modern event where Hogak won that they were like, all right, fine, we're going to ban it finally.
We'll get the GAC. They banned around Hogak. So instead of actually dealing with anything, WotC offered, again, obvious lip service in the announcement to mask their desire to move product over curating formats and effectively let the players suffer what would become a rancid 2 months between this announcement in June and the one in August. We saw LGSs swap modern RCQs over to limited RCQs, and TOs drop legacy events entirely as tournament attendance began to wane. An event that has triggered bans in the past. If you go back and you read the ban announcement, every ban announcement for Infinity and the banning announcement of Jace the Mind Sculptor and Stoneforge Mystic and Standard, they all contain the same language, and that is about declining tournament attendance. Yep. People no longer want to engage with these formats. We have declining tournament attendance. But because the set is only 10 days old, fuck if they're going to ban anything from it. No. I maintain they are going to just ban Shuko in Modern and, like, wipe their hands of the format and call it fucking good. But that's not going to end the problem. It's just going to make it a little more difficult to play that deck. It'll still be the best thing. And I'm going to laugh so hard. Now, the transparency issue. So we have this lip service announcement, and we have it coupled with WotC's effort at transparency, which effectively backfired when they showed again their whole ass, saying that their legacy specialist cited a need to ban Grief for the June announcement, and WotC doubling down, saying, no way, couldn't possibly do anything. The results will change with Modern Horizons 3. And it's not like there's even a legacy event worth playing in. Meanwhile, people are pointing, like the fucking Will Smith meme.
Yeah.
Just over at Gen Con, and $100,000 prize payout for the Secret Lair Showdown. That event had been announced months ago.
Yep.
When WotC's out here just talking out the side of their fucking head about the legacy format that their specialist is in tune with, but they choose not to listen to. Why even have this person? So, with the May announcement, Pioneer players continue to see their trust erode in WotC's ability to understand that format, let alone curate it, and they have to suffer with the same stale 3 decks they have been for several years.
Yep.
But their season is coming to an end. We come around to Modern, and Legacy is always below the surface, being played at the LGS level. So, in June, joining them are the Modern and Legacy players who had immediate issues with the state of their respective formats. Though, while the Modern format was still in flux, the tournament logistic issues surrounding the Nadu loops were obvious and needed to be dealt with then. If you talk to anybody who has to engage with this deck at a competitive level, from player to judge, and you listen to them complain and you ask them to boil down their complaints, the majority of them come down to the same set of verbiage they used to ban Sensei's Divining Top and Second Sunrise. It just takes too long. It is a time thief. It doesn't steal time from the opponent. It steals time from everybody in the event when rounds go over. That is a logistical issue that we can solve with a banning.
Yep.
Then, like I said, Legacy is under the surface, always being played at the LGS level, and they're basically being left out in the cold and then get to witness firsthand WotC's either complete inability to manage their format, meaning a legacy player's format, or WotC not trusting their format specialist, or not even really understand what events are happening. And all this was extremely disheartening for a group of players that were asking for anything to be done for almost a year at this point.
Yeah.
We've been asking as legacy players for the format to be engaged with for over a year. It wasn't grief last summer. It was the One Ring and Beans. And what happened from there is we just got problems stacked on top of problems. So sure, the format's changing, but not for the better.
No, not at all.
We just keep seeing this format turn into a cesspool. So this announcement for me, like you made a lot of great points about the one in May. This is the one that if it's going to erode trust in the game, is going to do it for everyone that isn't a standard player. And the only reason at this, like when I was talking to people about the state of Magic in general, I said all formats are terrible. They're all cesspools right now, including standard, was because nobody was playing standard. So it's not curated at all. We don't actually know what's going on. And because the domain deck is still like the de facto best deck, it does seem like it's a boring as hell format. And thus nobody would want to engage with it because there's not anything meaningful to engage with.
Yep.
So no constructed format, aside from maybe Pauper and Vintage, are really worth engaging with from a player perspective because of this just erosion of competitive formats through lack of action on the BNR.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really telling that the two best formats,
Legacy and Vintage,
in terms of what you can invest in right now, are the cheapest and the most expensive.
That's fair.
So all of their accessible go into an LGS and play it formats are dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
How can you convince me, a store, to sell someone your product when I know it's bad? And I know if I do that, that person's probably not coming back.
Yeah.
It's not great. You know, we have a lot of foot traffic, so there's kids, and it's a lot of, hey, I want to, pick something up and learn something. I want to play a game, and it's almost always Pokemon is where we send them because we don't want to send them to Magic because it's just not good right now.
Ooh.
And we don't want to send them to Yu-Gi-Oh because we don't talk about Yu-Gi-Oh.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's really bad that, to me especially, like, knowing that they have had specialists for a while, you have people who literally, it's their job to follow this format.
Yeah.
And they are telling you, this is what you need to do. And they're like, nah, fam, we got money to make.
Yeah.
I don't understand
Money
it.
printer,
And it is such a, like, this, the June announcement was one of the most tone-deaf things I have ever read in my life. It was just so almost blatant. We don't give a shit about you guys. And that just feels absolutely terrible.
Exactly. They use effectively the same wording in the announcement for Pioneer that Modern players got like 2 weeks later. And that is, let's see. It's one sentence, so it's hard to break up, so I'll give it to you straight because it is effectively the same thing. We are making no changes to the format today, as we still see room for the metagame to shift around the surge of Nadu combo, and because regional championship qualifiers for Modern continue to mid-November, we don't like to disrupt those events mid-season. The regional championship round for Modern starts, and then the dates. It's like the exact same thing they said to Modern players. They're like, well, you guys already bought your cards for this deck that is just really bad to play with and against. So like we made money on our end. Let the LGSs figure this one out. Why would we bother?
Yeah, it's bad. And I don't understand why they're like, this is to me, what says more than anything, we're putting profit over the quality of our product.
Yeah.
Short-term profit, mind you.
For sure.
Because this is not something that you do with a long-term business plan for this product. We're not trying to alienate stores, players, your competitive scene.
Yeah.
You're just not trying to do that unless you're just thinking about the right now. How do we make money for our shareholders right now?
Yeah. The main, so like, I agree 100%. And I think the last thing I have to say about this is actually based on what you just said, which is just, I mentioned the tournament attendance thing, right?
Yeah.
At the time that Affinity was running standard and Cawblade was running standard, in that era of the game, the only way to engage with it meaningfully was in a constructed fashion and in a tournament fashion. Now, the most lucrative and the most popular way to be engaging with the game is through Commander.
Yep.
So if you have waning tournament attendance now, it doesn't actually affect WotC that much because the majority of the engagement comes from people who are playing games with anywhere from like 4 to 12 people in them, not 2.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry that much about this kind of erosion, about what's happening at the tournament level for these formats, because at the end of the day, your bread and butter players don't care about any of these formats. They care about what are the new decks coming out with the next set, and do I need to buy any of the singles from them, or do any of them look good enough to just buy and sleeve up as is? And I think that is also a really big problem here, and something that I didn't really think about until you said it just now, or you basically alluded to it right now, which is just the overwhelming majority of people just play Commander. And that is the most important thing for the shareholders and the stockholders, is to keep selling product. But to whom? The overwhelming majority of players, which just play Commander.
Yeah. And and we'll get to this in a future episode, I wish they would just, at this point, pick one or the other, because you've got one on literal life support, and then you have the people you're designing your product for. Mm-hmm. Put us out of our misery.
Yeah. So I have little faith in the August announcement. I do agree with Bosch and Roll that there's the possibility for upwards of 10 cards to be put on the BNR announcement. Yep. Not for any particular format, just sprinkled around.
Yeah.
And I think that would be fantastic. 10 cards allows you to address all the formats. And it has the opportunity to create a new format in multiple, or new metas in multiple formats at a given time, and rejuvenate the game in the middle of, or effectively the middle of a modern season. Before we had, I think, man, I wish I knew, but all my RCQs coming up that I'm judging are sealed. So I don't know if it's Pioneer again or if it's Standard. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But just rejuvenate every aspect of this game from a competitive standpoint with a good BNR.
Yeah.
So
please.
Yeah. Anything before picks?
Nope. Let's take it away.
All right. Did I go first last week or did you?
Well, I'm going first this week. I don't know.
Perfect.
So, I have kind of an interesting one, and I say that because it's on theme for the episode. It is about BNR announcements. Mm-hmm. I have a little bit more faith in the BNR because I would like to think that the shareholders might realize actually that their cash cow is on life support unless they change some things. I am picking Stoneforge Mystic. Now, what does that have to do with the BNR? It's already unbanned and everything. Well, depending on what happens in Legacy and Vintage with the BNR, there is a very real chance that Stoneforge may have a place in those metagames again. It wasn't that long ago that Stoneblade, some format of it, was everywhere in Legacy. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that long ago that Stoneblade was really good in Modern, too. And I think that if we get an effective ban that kind of slows the formats down a little, you may see or will see a bump in Stoneforge. And I think that it's worth noting, right now they're sitting around, I think like $16 is low.
For World Wake, yeah.
For World Wake, they've been as much as 30 in recent memory when the card was doing well in Modern.
Yes.
So, if some things change, some things get shaken up, This is a card that right now has the price point of that like $16 range with really no pressure from 60 card formats outside of fringe decks and legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Yorion taxes, depending on your area, may be meta, may not. But anyways, if we can get even a little bit of support for this card in a 60 card format, it easily becomes a $30 card in my opinion.
Yep.
Timeline wise, kind of depends. We've got a BNR on Monday when I believe this episode goes live, so you may be too late by that point. But if not, it's something that has shown a pedigree in the past.
Yes.
It has shown that it does well in 60 card formats. It obviously does well in EDH as well. I know a ton of people that have it in their 99. Just as like, yeah, I'm going to put it in my 99. It's just an efficient way to grab equipment. And with that, it's still at the price point it is. I don't see a reprint for this anytime soon because, I mean, frankly, yeah, they could plug it in any set really, but it would require an equipment-centric theme to the set. And based on what we know of what's coming, I don't see that happening. I just don't see where that is for the rest of the calendar year. Especially since we clearly dodged the reprint in Assassin's Creed, which I legitimately thought may see a Stoneforge reprint. But I just think it's a good look, and I think it's something to be mindful of when these BNRs happen, and the expectation is you have absolutely got to do something about these formats. You have to.
Yep.
Start looking at the decks that were there before. Start looking at the things that deck preyed on.
Mm-hmm.
Start looking at those as, okay, I may want to start stocking up on some of these because they're probably going to hit buy list before too long when that card starts spiking. So I just wanted to point it out.
Yep. We confabbed about this before the episode, and this is also a card I really do believe in as well. When we were talking about it, I thought it was opportune to take a look at this. And the reason I believe in Stoneforge Mystic is because this is a card not just with a pedigree, but with a pedigree in these formats in recent memory. So you mentioned Yorion and Taxes in Legacy. That is basically, it's not a bygone deck. XJC Cloud or XJ Cloud, whatever it is. Definitely a D&T truther. Definitely puts up results continuously.
Yep.
You do see D&T from time to time in Legacy. But below that, though, there are a lot of other decks that have opportunity. With the change in the format and the way things are shaped, with Modern Horizons 3, we got Null Drifter, which basically makes Stifle Knot an extremely good deck because now you have effectively 8 knots. It is only a 4/4, but with Annihilator, I think 1. It's really good. It's even really good to evoke. But before that, there was a deck called Kinder Surprise that was Stifle Knot, but it played Stoneforge Mystic for Cryptic Coat, a la Illusionary Mask, and kind of a throwback cutesy name to that way of unmorphing Dreadnought. I can't remember the I don't know the
Illusionary
text
Mask was, it unmorphed it, and it
I don't know if it's been Oracle to morph or it's still something weird. That's kind of where I'm stumbling.
It is Oracle still something weird, but functionally morph.
It's morph, right?
Yeah.
So you have that, and then you had Stoneblade decks in general. A lot of Jeskai control lists generally kind of defaulted back to a Stoneforge Mystic package because it's a pretty tight 6-card package. It's like Entomb Reanimated. It just kind of works really well together, these cards. And with the removal of Grief, we have the opportunity to play Stoneforge Mystic and not just have the equipment ripped from our hands immediately. So there's the opportunity here. There's also Nadu in Legacy format, and people are still experimenting with that deck. They don't know how best to do it. And you could play Urza Saga, you could play Stoneforge Mystic to go get your Shuko. You could play a heavier equipment package with pre-war formal wear and Cryptic Coat inside the Nadu list. So there's a lot of opportunity inside Legacy that is just out of our reach until we get that BNR. Then you go back and you look at Modern. D&T was a deck inside Modern well before the era that we're in, somewhere before Yorion Money Pile. So basically between Modern Horizons 2 and the advent of the Yorion deck that is now banned in Modern, we had Death and Taxes. We had Stoneblade lists. The format was a little bit slower, and these decks could kind of cut their teeth on people who wanted to dirtle a bit more. Could you beat Tron with Stoneforge Mystic? All the time. Very easy, not that difficult. The problem is that all of Stoneforge Mystic's friends cost 2 and 3 mana, and so that's a little too much for the format. That's a bridge too far. Instead, that deck basically morphed down into what we're seeing now in the Dimir Fra deck, which I've heard from various sources as being 50% against the field, 0% against Nadu. So why would you even play that deck? But everything...
Then it's 0%. Yeah.
Exactly. All of its threats cost 2 mana. The majority of its spells cost 1. That's where we are with what is effectively a control deck that isn't the Jeskai control deck in the modern format.
Yep.
That we have to be that efficient that we can't afford to play Tef 3 in this list. That's just 3 mana is just a bridge too far right now. But when things slow down a little bit in modern, if they peel back some layers after Nadu, there is the opportunity for Stoneforge Mystic to come back. And I like that bet. I think that's a good bet to make. After that, like you said, you have the commander players that can look at this card. You don't have a lot of ways to dig through your 99 and find your equipment. Off the top of my head, there's the Stoneforge Mystic. There's the card from Fifth Dawn that I can't remember anymore that's played in Hammer Time, the 1 white sorcery. There is
Steel Shaper's Gift.
Steel Shaper's Gift. You have Urza Saga to go get your 1 and 0 mana stuff. We have Stoneforge Mystic at home from Origins that when it deals combat damage to a player, you put a counter on it. It's a weird keyword that's only from that set. And when it gets the counter, you then go through your deck. It then becomes Stoneforge Mystic. And then there's some odds and ends stuff throughout the history of the commander decks that fill in. But Stoneforge Mystic is kind of a premier piece for that. So even if you just want to lean into buying them now, in the advent of the BNR, you can probably just sell in that haze at a profit. Because also historically, when this was on the BNR, what 2 cards would rise? Stoneforge Mystic and the Political Prisoner.
Splinter Twin.
So there's always that opportunity. And we don't really see on the Stoneforge Mystic graph right now that it did spike with May and June's announcements. But there is the opportunity for that because there's so much going on in these formats that people want changed that we could come back to a version of the format that isn't turn 3. That is the modern format is a turn 3 format right now. For me, that is way too fast for that format. Legacy isn't even a turn 3 format. Why is Modern a turn 3 format? Why is Modern so juiced right now?
Agreed.
I think they need to rein that format in and make it like they used to, a turn 4 format. And when you make it a turn 4 format, then you can cast Stoneforge Mystic on 2 and not worry about just dying.
Yeah.
You have opportunity here. So this is a card that I really do believe in as well. For me, I am looking at Commander, and I'm looking at a card that I only found because I was going through bulk that I don't know where it came from. And I was pricing it out. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is a card. And the card is Jaheira, Friend of the Forest. It is from Commander Legends, Battle for Baldur's Gate. And I have the stocks graph up now. Everything was fine until we got to Bloomburrow. And then we got a ridiculous commander deck. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, is 200 green for a 2/3. Legendary creature, human, elf, druid. Because it's from a legend from Battle for Baldur's Gate, it has the text, choose a background, which only works in the command zone. But the key part of this card is the passive ability. Tokens you control have tap, add green. That's it. It's a very simple card. Now, CK, when I was taking my notes, was buying 80 for 440. They are now buying 86 for 5, so this is on the up and up there as well as the open market. There were 118 listings at $10.04 LP or better on TCG Player. We're now seeing 117 for $10.10, so just a little bit of movement there. I had this on my list starting in January of 2024 when CK was buying 61 at $3, and there were 200 on TCG Player at $5.68, which is why I do think we have not missed the boat on this, but we have missed maximal gains for this card. And I didn't quite write it off. I did check it, but I was not checking it daily. I was checking it quarterly, and that's my fault. So When this comes to Commander and its playability, basically we're looking to play this in any kind of deck that makes just tokens with a hint of green. We don't actually want to be mono green. We just want chef's kiss of green in this list, but we want to make tokens.
Yep.
Now, Jaheira isn't popular as a commander with or without the background. It is in 43 decks and 3,316 decks respectively. That is the 43 as a commander and 3.3k as a commander with a background. It is wildly popular in the 99, showing up in 105,000 decks, according to EDHREC. So, big diff. Limiting your deck to either mono green, playing just Jaheira isn't a great option, as you'll see on Rec, and generally speaking, the background options for Jaheira are fairly weak, making it the most powerful in the 99 rather than having it in the command zone. Now, the most important part of this card is that it says tokens you control, not token creatures you control.
Yep.
So it fits into any kind of token generating deck. Creature token decks, while an obvious home for this, might be one of the weakest options, as without haste, the tokens won't be able to tap for mana the turn they are created, unlike food or treasures or maps. But they are still powerful nonetheless. Oddly enough, even the rolls from Wilds of Eldraine are tokens that can tap for mana. Because, like equipment, when you attack with that creature, you don't tap the roll. It stays untapped. But it is this weird little ticky-tacky thing. It's a token. Cool.
It is.
Looking at how people are utilizing this card is such a wild ride. You have aristocrats-style decks with Mirkwood bats to ping out your opponents. You have people doing Academy Manufacturer shenanigans. Then there's the on-the-nose creature token suite with War Leaders, Call, and Impact, Tremors. The more you dig into this card, the more you see the wide appeal this has for the more casual commander crowd. It's a fantastic card to help you turn a motley crew of tokens into an imposing board state for just 2 and a green. It gives you the ability to do a lot more with a pile of tokens that isn't just enter combat, which can really lead to a lot of creativity and deck building and expression within the format. So this checks a lot of boxes for casual commander players, and it's really easy to see why. What happened with Bloomburrow is that we got a Golgari token deck that had Academy Manufacturer in it. I think Zulaport Cutthroat might be in it, and it basically kind of guided you to wanting to play this card and playing your token doublers so that you can just go absolutely, no pun intended, nutty. And that's why we see this huge spike. It's not like we got a brand new way to play with this card or a brand new type of token that was easier to create. WotC just said, here you go. Here's the deck. And so all you need to do is slot Jaheira in it. And that's what I missed, was I didn't comb through the decks and I didn't equate this card with that deck. And that's why we're behind on this card. But we're not out of it. We're just behind. Timeline-wise, there were when I was taking my notes, 296 copies of the set version of this. And they sell at about 12 copies a day. This becomes a $12 card after about 120 copies sell through. It becomes a $15 card after about 140 copies sell through. That's why we are behind. We're not out of this. There is profit to be made here. Showcases. There are 115 listings with a market price of $3.92. There are 194 total copies. This sells about 8 copies a day. The showcase version becomes a $6 card before the first 60 copies sell through, and an $8 card shortly before the next 92 copies sell through. And then it's just a $10 card. So moving in on the showcase version can lead to larger profits, but we are also seeing it sell at a slower rate. So this is kind of a balancing act. If you want to go deep on Jaheira, I would go wide between the two. Now, when I wrote my notes, I didn't see a lot of buy list growth at all, so I said I wouldn't suggest looking at them for short-term game. I suggested flipping them back into TCG player, but at this point in time, my notes for the timeline from here on out are basically just bunk, because we saw an increase in CK in like a day or two, and it was a meaningful change. It's an over 10% increase in buy list value. It's like a 15% increase in buy list value. So vendors are responding to this. There might actually even be arbitrage opportunity for the showcase version right now on CK. If I were to be looking to move this card, I would be looking to move it on TCG Player for a future price for the set version that would be at $12 or $15. I would have them listed that much. I wouldn't go through direct. I would keep them in my binder, and if I could trade them out for 12 or 15 or whatever or wherever I can make my profit without having to deal with fees, and it's a decent margin, I would take it and then just pull them down off TCG Player, moving them from my binder. Because again, this comes from battles for Baldur's Gate, which people are no longer opening. This isn't one of the hype cards. It floats below the surface because it's not an ancient dragon. And those people that might not actually know this card exists. So you have the opportunity to basically raise awareness of this card by having it in a binder. And it's very easy to then go home and pull that card down off TCG Player. Then, if you can't move it for whatever reason, I would turn it around to buy list because it looks like they're going to keep up for an amount of time. Reprint equity on this one, a little difficult. We would have to revisit Baldur's Gate, and certain characters would have to return, which I believe is doubtful based on how much depth of story there is to Baldur's Gate. So I don't think we'd actually see this reprinted as is. If we start to see CLB, that's Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, get the universes within treatment, and WotC wants to lean into the background mechanic more, then I can see this catching a reprint. But that's a lot of ifs. So I really don't think we're going to get this. I think we're just kind of locked here. Could this hit in a Commander product? Maybe, but we already passed that point. The perfect place would have been this Bloombarrow deck where they gave you Academy Manufacturer inside the list.
Yeah.
Like the next thing is going to have Academy Manufacturer and multiple token doubling cards for them to really want to put this in there for it to make sense. Like whatever. Buy quantity on this. I opened like 1 or 2 of these from draft, and I wouldn't be looking to hold more than 8 of these total. Like that's why I just kind of found it in bulk that I was sorting through. Was opened in draft, not that great, wasn't making a lot of tokens. Just it's a random rare from CLB. Probably do something in a few years, tuck it away, and then I just happened to sort through it.
Yeah,
here we are.
No, I love this card. I think it's an incredible look, and I think reprint equity is one of the best reasons why. Jaheira is as plain specific as it gets. Not only is she exclusive to Baldur's Gate and Forgotten Realms, but like she's been in every one of the Baldur's Gate games so far, so she has like an iconography behind her as well.
Cool. I didn't know that.
So like, yeah, she is of note for people who are dumb and care about this and were mad about it. She is one of the only unromanceable companions in Baldur's Gate 3. Maybe because in Baldur's Gate 2, you kill her husband and then you can marry her. Anyways, yeah, druids are weird. But
Baldur's Gate lore with...
yeah, with a little bit of magic as well. I love those games. I think one of the first things you said is also the single most important part about this card. Tokens you control. Because not only is it, your map tokens and stuff like that, it's your mask tokens from Estrid. There's tons of different tokens that exist in green XX colors. There's plenty of ways to generate those. There's blood tokens, there's everything. And this card is so good and so efficient that the background doesn't matter. That's just, who cares? Without that line, it's really good. It doesn't seem like it's something that's going to get a reprint, and this is going to be eternally good.
Yes.
Because it's a card that has such an incredible appeal to casual players. And I think that's what really, really drills it home, is that it's, as long as casual EDH exists, this card will be good. This card will have people who want to play it. And that's what truly does it for me.
Yeah, I think the closest comparison point you can make are cards like Cryptolith, right? Colorless green enchantment from Shadows over Innistrad. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
Yep.
Like, this is not the same thing, but it's like the closest comparison you can kind of make to this card. And they haven't reprinted Cryptolith Rites, but there's like Cryptolith Rites is the second or third iteration on something like this. And we never quite return back to the previous template. We always get something a little bit different. Yeah. So even if we were to get Jaheira back, there's a chance that it's just going to be iterative design, and we'll get something new on this. And to pull back the curtain a little bit, we are recording this on August 21st.
Yes.
If you go back and you watch the Star City Commander versus that released this day, they went back and played the same Blue Barrow decks they did from the episode before, and Jonathan Suarez puts on a masterclass with Jaheira in the Golgari token deck. I had no idea. I don't even know if he put it in the first iteration or not. That one just kind of farted out. When it came time for this one, the stars just aligned, and he had the manufacturer. He cloned the manufacturer a couple of times within that deck. They had to find the formula for how you make tokens with multiple how many tokens you make with manufacturer when you make a clue, a food, or a treasure, because there's a succinct algorithm for it.
Yeah.
So he could tap them all for mana with Jaheira. Right. It's all right there. The video they released today is just a masterclass in what happens when this card gets going. And I really would recommend, if you like the card and you think it can be good and you have a little bit of faith in it, watch this episode. Watch what happens when he plays that card. It is a fantastic showing for it. But that's my pick. So
love it.
Anything else before I cut out?
No.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
at Damon_Thurston.
And we'll see you next week.